Be Yoga Studio. So today we're going to do a few things with the hips. We're going to do some mobility and stretching to warm up, and then we're going to do some hip drills. Let's get started. First, coming to find yourself in Baddha Konasana. So soles of the feet together. That doesn't really matter where your knees are, where you're at. Just find a position where your heels are in a relatively comfortable position. For some of us that might be quite close, for some of us a little bit further away, and likewise the knees will be at varying heights. So just work with what you've got. You're going to hold on to those ankles and you're going to lift up through the chest, and you're just going to start to feel a little stretch in the inner thighs. And just holding it here for a few breaths. If you find you're very tight in the hamstrings and you're rounding a lot through the back, you may find that the first stretch, this first Baddha Konasana, you want to press yourself up against the wall to give yourself a little lift so that you're not feeling heavy and hanging in the hips. If this isn't a problem for you, you're on your mat in the middle of the room. Okay, so from here we're going to start doing some circles. So you're going to shift your body weight over onto your right sit bone. You're then going to hollow out your belly, round all the way back, so you're almost really on the back of your coccyx. And then you're going to shift your weight onto your left sit bone, and then you're going to come all the way forward. So it's almost like you're stirring a giant pot, and round you go. So wherever you want to hold on to your legs, your hands will move, it really doesn't matter. It's all about that articulation. And so nice big circles, try not to cut corners. If you're tight in the QL, in the lower back, you're very much going to feel this. Your body's going to want to cut a few corners. Don't let it, nice and slow. So you can go for as many rounds as you like here. I like to do at least 10 or 15, but I'm just going to do a few, and now I'm going to change directions. Otherwise, the whole video will be about doing circles with the hips. Okay. So feeling obviously how different it feels when you move in the opposite direction. Don't worry too much about the shoulders or the head. I just really want you to feel it in the hips. And let's go for one more like this. Good. Okay, coming back to center. You're now going to find a 90-90 with your legs. So taking right leg forward, knee in line with hip, ankle in line with knee, perfect 90 degrees. Left leg back, knee in line with hip, heel in line with knee. I'm going to shift over so that my inner knee is on the mat, so it's a little bit more comfortable. Now notice how you want to kind of slop to the side, flop over. You're going to use that right hand to push yourself up and try and lengthen this right side of the waist without kind of doing a half moon shape. And you really want to even out those shoulders. You want to drop this hip down as much as you can. This back leg is internally rotating. This front leg is externally rotating. And so notice where it feels more comfortable. For me, I feel a nice pinch here, deep in the hip joint, and that's because my internal rotation isn't so good. External, quite comfortable there. You're bound to feel quite a big stretch here as well, and really lift up, lengthen, broaden through the collarbones. For here, we're going to move through center and towards the back. So this is important. I want you to try not to shift your hips at all. So it's going to feel a bit tweaky, a bit sticky in the hips when you move, especially for the first few rounds. So you're going to use your hands and you're going to roll onto the feet. So you're not going to move your bum at all. You're going to feel that articulation in the hip joint. You're going to stop in the center, open those knees nice and wide, and then you're going to draw the right knee in, the left leg out, as you find that same 90-90 to the back of your mat. Again, you don't want to flop into the left side. You use that left hand, left fingertips to press the floor away, lengthen left side. Feel maybe that pinch, internal rotation of the back leg. Lift up, lengthen, broaden through the collarbones, and off we go. Through center and back to the front. So now you're going to roll through these. You're rolling from left sit bone to right sit bone, from left side to right side. Use your hands as support. It is recommended that you do at least 2 to 3 minutes of this movement, even longer if you can. You're going to start to feel those joints loosen up a little bit. It should start to feel a little nicer, the head of that thigh bone moving in the hip socket. And then if there's any part that feels particularly sticky, stop there for a moment. Feel the movement in the hips. Start to get to know your body. Maybe one side a little tighter than the other. Take your time. There's no rush at all. And once you feel you've done enough of these, obviously I'm not going to do 4 to 5 minutes, I want you to start increasing that range of motion. So what you're going to do now is you're going to go over to the front, you're going to lift that back leg, and you're going to take it over, and you're going to press it down. And then you're going to replace it back again, and you're going to go back to the back. You're going to take the back leg, lift it up, place it over, little stretch into the glutes. Take that leg back, and come back to the front. So obviously for some of us, we're tighter, so this is going to be basically it. We're going to feel it here in the hips already, in the glutes. That's okay. We're just starting to make the movement a little bit bigger. Lifting that back leg wherever you can. It really doesn't matter as long as you're feeling that stretch. Again, 10 each side at least. So start to wake up the glutes. Pressing it forward. We're not hanging out there too much. This is a bit more of a dynamic warm-up. I'm going to do one more each side, trying to stack ankle over knee if you can. Taking it back. And then the last movement for this little warm-up, we're going to take it over to the side. We're going to take that left hand to right thigh. We're going to make sure we're not arching the back. So tuck the tailbone, twist, and slide your hands out. So you get a lovely stretch on the left side of the body. Again, we're not going to hang out there for very long. We're going to drag yourself back, and you're going to go through center, and the other side. Lengthen through the spine, twist, and slide the arms out. Just taking that stretch a little deeper, slide yourself back. Again, go back slide. Maybe you want to play around with it a bit. Take the left hand on top of the right. Feel a bit more stretch into the back. And up you come. One more. And back to center. Okay, so as we're doing squatting variations, it's very important that we don't ignore the ankles. So we want to stretch into those ankles a little bit. So I'm going to turn to face the side just so that you can see. Depending on where your ankles are at, some people are quite tight in the ankles. So this is the sum total of their Japanese style sitting. They can't actually flatten the top of their ankles down onto the mat. Even if you can flatten your ankles, you want to stretch out the top of those ankles a little bit. So we're going to take your body back. You're going to lift the knees a little bit if you can. Maybe you don't need to lift the knees. Watch now with the feet that you don't flop into the outside of your foot, that your foot is absolutely straight, all 10 toes flat on the mat, and gently start to press back. Take it easy, and everyone's ankles are different. You might have an injury you're working with. You just want to feel a nice stretch at the top of the ankle. Stretch it out and bring it back. Again, we're not holding that stretch. It's a bit more of a dynamic warm-up. Wake up to those ankles. It's not passive stretching. And maybe go for another 5 more. That's it. Good. And then we're going to go the other way. So not are we just extending at the ankle, we want to flex at the ankle as well. So we're going to take the foot, we're going to place it down. We're going to take this other leg and we're going to take it back. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your whole body weight, you're going to lean it on this leg, and you're going to lift that right heel just off the floor. And then you're going to place as much of your body weight down onto that thigh. You're definitely going to start to feel that Achilles tendon, back of the calf, especially if you're tight there. You're going to feel that stretch. You might also feel that pressure in the front of your ankle as well. Okay, so play around here until you can feel it. And then slowly start to shift your weight back so that the heel is almost touching the floor or just lightly touching the floor. And then bring it forward again and take it back. This is a really nice stretch for the calves. And you start to feel it all the way up the outside of the calves as well. If you struggle with bending the knee, If the outside of your calf peroneus muscles also get a little bit tight, this is a great little movement. I like to rock back and forward. It takes the stretch all into different fibers of the calf muscle. It feels really good. And then of course the other side. And so again, coming forward, making sure that heel is lifted off the floor to begin with, placing a lot of weight down, and then slowly making your way back. So again, this is a little bit fiddly. Sometimes you have to shift around a little in order to get that perfect spot. But then when you find it, it feels really good. And again, there's no limit as to how long. If you've got very tight calves, you may want to hang out here for a couple of minutes. Maybe you don't feel much in this position. Your ankles are not problematic at all. You just want to be here for 30 seconds to a minute. But definitely make sure you give those ankles a little bit of attention before we work into our squats. Okay, we're ready to start our squats. Okay, so for a lot of us, squatting doesn't come so easily. For a lot of different reasons. It can be hips, it can be ankles. A lot of the time it is ankles, maybe a bit of both. Whatever it is, I want to make sure that when you start with these squatting mobility exercises, that your heels are on the floor. So a rolled up mat's an awesome little prop to have so that you can really drive those heels into the floor. This is really important for this mobility workout. Often you don't need your heels to be on the floor. So find your squatting position. If you are in a squat and you notice that the inside blades of your feet are flopping down, so you're pronating and the knees are coming in, this is a clear sign that something's not right. Okay, so this is when you want to be able to prop yourself up onto a rolled up mat. There are different varying degrees of heights. Make sure it's not too high, that you've just got enough mat to create some space so that you can open up the knees. Okay, so sometimes your feet can get to the floor and your knees can actually go wide a little bit, but from the side, you're very hunched and super uncomfortable, and there's no space in the front of your body at all. This is also a sign that maybe a little bit of a prop so that you can lengthen through the spine and allow those arms to do a little bit more work with the knees. So make sure before we do these movements that you've got a good position for your squat, that you're pressing into the outside blade of the feet, that your heels are driving into the floor, toes are down, toes are light, but the feet are nice and firmly planted into the floor. That the shoulders are away from the ears, the neck is long, and your spine is relatively straight.